The ranch had been silent for so long that silence itself felt like a living thing, something that watched him as he moved through the days. Eli Mercer had learned the language of that quiet, the way it stretched across the fields at dawn and settled into the wood of the house at night, heavy and unmoving. The land was vast, open and unforgiving, much like the life he had chosen when he bought the ranch years ago. Believing solitude would be easier than hope. The neighbors were miles away. The town, a distant memory he visited only when supplies ran low. And the nights were filled with nothing but wind and the sound of his own thoughts. He was a man built for work, not for company, broad-shouldered, scarred by sun and labor, and worn down by the kind of loneliness that didn't scream but simply stayed. When the letter arrived, folded neatly and smelling faintly of ink and foreign paper, he read it twice before believing it was meant for him. The idea of a bride sent across miles of ocean and land felt absurd, almost cruel, yet something in him stirred, cautious and quiet, like an animal waking after a long winter. He told himself it was practical. The ranch needed help, the house needed life, and he was no longer young enough to pretend time would wait for him to change his mind. But deep down, beneath the logic, there was a fragile hope he barely allowed himself to touch. The agency had written in careful language, promising companionship, shared purpose, a woman willing to build a life where dust and distance ruled. What they hadn't prepared him for was her presence. When the wagon finally appeared at the edge of the property, Eli stood on the porch, hat in hand, heart pounding harder than it had in years. She stepped down slowly, unfolding herself like something unreal, tall in a way that made the world around her seem smaller. Her posture careful, as if she had learned to make herself less threatening, less visible. She looked at him with eyes that held both fear and resolve, and in that moment, Eli understood that loneliness was not something he carried alone. Her name was Anna, and she spoke softly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty that hung between them. She had crossed oceans and borders on faith alone, carrying nothing but a single suitcase and a promise written by strangers. The house seemed to breathe differently when she walked inside, the room shifting as if surprised to be occupied again. Eli showed her where she would sleep, where she could set her things, where the morning light came in warm and gentle. They spoke little at first, their words careful and polite, circling each other like wary animals. Yet the air between them was charged with something unspoken, a tension born not of desire alone, but of two lives colliding without rehearsal. At night, Eli lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sound of another person moving under his roof, his thoughts tangled with questions he didn't yet have the courage to ask. Days passed, marked by shared meals and quiet work. Anna learned the rhythms of the ranch quickly, her presence both awkward and essential, her height making her movements seem exaggerated, as if the world had not been built with her in mind. Eli watched her from a distance, noticing the way she studied everything with careful attention, how she smiled politely but rarely laughed, how her hands trembled just slightly when she thought no one was looking. He felt protective in a way that surprised him, a pull that went beyond the agreement that had brought her here. At the same time, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the fear of failing someone who had risked everything to stand in his doorway. At night, when the lamps were low and the house creaked with familiar sounds, he wondered what she expected of him, and whether he was capable of being more than a shelter from the world. The moment that changed everything came quietly. A storm rolled in one evening, sudden and fierce, the sky darkening as if night had arrived early. The wind howled against the house, rattling windows and doors, and Anna froze in the hallway, her face pale, her breath shallow. Eli saw it instantly, the way her composure cracked, revealing something raw beneath. Without thinking, he spoke to her softly, guiding her to sit, staying near without touching, letting his presence be an anchor rather than a demand. She told him haltingly about nights spent alone in places that were never truly safe, about learning to be strong because she had no choice. Her words settled between them heavy and intimate, and Eli realized that whatever this arrangement had begun as, it was becoming something far more fragile and real. When the storm finally passed, leaving the world washed clean and quiet, neither of them moved. The distance between them felt both vast and impossibly small. Eli wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but he held back, knowing trust was something that had to be earned, not taken. In that restraint, something shifted. Anna looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, her fear softened into something else, something warmer and uncertain. It was not love, not yet, but it was possibility. And for a man who had lived so long without it, that was enough to make his chest ache. The night ended without promises, without declarations. But as they went to their separate rooms, both carried the weight of what had begun, aware that the silence of the ranch would never be the same again. And if this story is pulling you in, if you feel the dust, the quiet, the tension of two lives bound by fate and choice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Stories like this unfold slowly, and you won't want to miss what comes next.